Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Indy Reporter 20-Minute Rundown. I am your host, the current face of Indy Reporter, Steve Whitmer. You guys know how it goes. 20 minutes is all we got. No more, maybe a little bit less. There's a very interesting day to it, so let's just get into it. Glad everybody's in the chat right now, ducking a special power. All right, so what was today? Today was that special day of HB 1032 getting talked about in elections. That's right. And I know some of you in the chat were actually watching some of the committee meeting today. Oh boy, was it not kind of wild? I mean, there are some pretty good testimonies, but other ones, not so much. A lot of the repeat of what was happening out during the House last week. So it wasn't just that was being heard today. We also had a bit of legislation with the soybean. Oh, not today with the soybean, but definitely with the veterinarian licensing with gene licensing, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So we had the Senate. They convened at what, like 12:30, and then the elections, I think, happened at 1:30. And last week, Peter Blinker talked about there's supposed to be a protest that happened under the Indiana Democrats, and then last Friday they canceled. We still don't know why. Don't you worry, there were still people that showed up to protest, which I have a couple of videos of that and pictures here from Kate Sharon. There are some pictures going on. A lot of people were screaming at the windows of the Senate chambers. Took over the entire second floor from what it looked like. A lot of people, to be honest with you. So there is also a little bit more video from Wi-Fi. No cheaters! No cheaters! You know, it was the usual group of bandits that show up for protesting. Whether they got paid or not, I'll leave that up to you. But from what I understand, there was a charter bus. I don't know if that's true or not. This one from Hannah Adamson, it was like you're looking at a bunch of poor puppies from Petland right now, just screaming at you, just barking at you and saying, let me in, take me home with you. And also screaming out, no cheaters. Another one from John Schmitz, Johnny GOP, Johnny Suitcase over here outside of the Senate chamber. Pretty good overall. All right. All right, so at the beginning, Mike Gaskell is the chair. Greg Walker, who is a hard no for redistricting, he is the co-chair of this. Mike Gaskell said there are 127 people that had signed up. Now, originally we said to testify against, but imagine there were probably some people that showed up to testify for redistricting. Surprisingly, there are a lot of people that showed up, way more people that showed up during the House hearing for redistricting. I'd say like 15 or 20 people, give or take. And I know some of you are saying, hey, you know what? That's not that many people. Well, for this one, it really is a lot of people because last time there were like two, I think, maybe 2 or 3 people that showed up. Shruggers Match, welcome to the chat. And at the beginning, some people, there was like one person that spoke and everybody started clapping. And Gaskell had to shut that down real quick. He looked at the officers and said, hey, if anybody's waving a sign, if anybody's getting loud, you have my permission to remove them, which I think is actually a really good idea. You don't want any disruption. Like Roses Are Pink said, order in the court must be maintained, which I 100% agree with. All right, so during the talks, during the election committee, there was a little bit of an update that we posted. There were 3 people, 3 extra people that sponsored the bill. Chris Garton, who has publicly said he is for. Liz Brown, who has publicly said they were for. And Tyler Johnson, which I'm not sure if they were publicly for. However, we'll talk about Tyler Johnson here in a bit. Alex Zimmerman, who is a state rep, he was really like manning the gate about what was allowed and what was not with rules, because Blake Johnson would always go up there and explain the rule, and Zimmerman would just smack him down and say, BJ, that's not happening here. And he just made sure that he was straight. Now, what the big question was, so the testimony was okay for the most part. Thank God. I mean, thank God. Gaskell's such a G when it comes to being chair and understand, hey, we don't want to be here all day. 2 minutes, then you're out. You're getting the cane and you're getting pulled off the stage. We'll kill your mic. That's not what he said, but that's what I'm assuming. But every time the buzzer would go off, and people can attest over here in the chat because they were watching it with me, They were saying, all right, okay. Buzzer would go off and they keep talking. Like, okay, thanks. Thank you. Thank you. And it was like, oh, thank God. A chairperson who is willing to just shut it down. That's what we needed when there's going to be 127 people speaking, though. Now, there were a couple of good testimonies. We had Ethan Hatcher from WIBC, Rob Kendall from WIBC, Richard Bagsby, who is a candidate for state senate against Ron Alting. I don't know which number he is. It doesn't really matter, but in the Lafayette area. And then there were a couple other people. Oh, yeah, like all of the grassroots GOP people showed up. Very impressed by all of that. You had someone from the Women's Federation. You had people from the Tea Party. You had like J.D. Manier, and I forgot some of the other people, though. J.D. Manier was going to run for Congress. That's the only reason why I remember. Some other names, I don't want to name them. I don't want to get them in trouble, so I will keep that to myself. However, there was the usual bandits, too, that were against it. The ones that we see all the time, Common Cause and Mad Voters and all the rest of them. But, yeah, it was next. And that's enough. Next, please. No, stop talking. Yeah, Ducky, for sure. That was really amusing, though, wasn't it? So the big question was, we knew there were a couple of people that were a hard yes and a couple of people that were a hard no, and some people that we weren't sure. We knew that they were going to play it by ear and see what was going to happen. Now, my gut feeling was it's probably going to make it out of committee, but it's going to dice roll if it's going to make it out of the Senate floor. So we knew that Gaskell and Daryl Schmidt and Tyler Johnson were a yes. I mean, we could tell that by the sponsoring bill. We knew J.D. Ford and Fady Kadora was a hard no, and we knew Republican Greg Walker was a hard no. The biggest we weren't sure of, biggest question marks were Stacey Donato, Greg Good, and Linda Rogers. I mean, I wasn't sure. Good was a hard maybe. I was kind of leaning no, but who could say? Same thing with Donato and same thing with Rogers. Now, there were a couple of amendments that the Republicans or Democrats started pushing through. I think there were 4 of them. 2 of the amendments, though, Greg Walker voted with. And then he went in this 20-minute tirade about how, I don't even know exactly. I kind of like checked out. I had to go take a quick shower. But he started crying at some point. Like, listen, Drew, listen. You can agree with this. If you see a grown man, a legislator, crying on the Senate floor, I can't have it. Listen, I can't have my legislators weeping in front of everybody. That will live with you forever. Sorry, Greg Walker. I know you're not going to be running it again. Thank God, because I can't handle it. Now, there was a question from J.D. Ford, I think, and it asked Gaskell, who was the person that made the map? And he actually answered it. He said it was Adam Kincaid. So I looked up Adam Kincaid, and it says right here from this Political article, a veteran Republican operative who helped his party coordinate redistricting efforts after 2010 will serve as the executive director of the National Republican Redistricting Trust. This was back in 2018. Also found another article from just 2 months ago where he had to speak in front of the Texas court, I believe, and asked them, he's like, hey, did Texas send you this, or was it the Republicans? And he's like, well, it said he was hired by the Republican National Committee, not Texas. Very interesting. So because we were always been wondering, is like, well, who is the person that made my map? And finally we have an answer. Now, everybody had a chance to speak up on if they were against it or explain their vote, why they were for it, and everybody kind of took a shot at it. But we ended up finding out Donato and Rogers said they might change their vote on the floor, but they want to push it through. Basically what they were all saying is, I think the entire Senate should be able to vote for this thing. It shouldn't be up to us. I'm pushing it through because I want the entire Senate to vote on it. And then Greg Good said it needs more vetting. He may or may not vote yes on the floor. And then Tyler Johnson, he said, I am a hard yes. And then obviously Greg Walker was a hard no. Gaskell was a hard yes. And even at some point where Gaskell was talking about President Trump, because basically he was saying is like, listen, this guy sacrificed everything. He is a true patriot, taking care of the border, taking care of the drug cartels, all of that. And he's like, I was just so tired of hearing about all of the Trump hate. So now past committee. Now, Hannah Adamson, I think she mentioned it, said it will get into the Senate, and then as early as Wednesday, they will have second reading, and then Thursday, they will probably have third readings, and that's when they will vote, which would actually make sense when you look at the, oh, there it is. All right, so the Senate is expected to adopt the committee report on Tuesday, which is tomorrow. If that happens, the Senate will hold its first floor vote on Wednesday, and we will see what happens with that. Now, I do want to talk about a couple of these bills. There was one bill because of Jean Lysing. She had a bill for veterinarians. Basically, what it was is that, you know how like there will be a lawyer and you say, hey, I took my bar exam in Illinois, and then I was able to get the credentials, and then I could get it in Indiana. Sound familiar? Well, they're wanting to do that with having a veterinary license as well, which I thought it was funny, is that she received $500 from the veterinarian medicine pack. This was something I've been saying for a very long time. When there's like a weird bill, go and look at their campaign reports, because there might be a chance that they actually got money from a pack for them to push that bill. Now, I thought this other one was funny. J.D. Ford has I think I talked about this on Friday or Saturday. He has a bill for drive-through safety lanes. So say you're in McDonald's, you're just trying to get some chicken nuggies, and all of a sudden the whole thing gets packed up. You're like, I want to go around. Well, and you can't. Well, this bill would force people to actually have a lane where you can get around. They're calling it a separate bypass lane. They're probably going to, J.D. Ford, I'm guessing, is trying to say it for safety. Or he's tired of being stuck in the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A. Who could say? This will be my funniest one. I really want this to be heard in committee, because this will be the funniest one ever. You have a bill for commercial advertising on a school bus. And you probably saw us pointed out on Twitter that, hey, you know, it's going to be really funny when you see all these like OnlyFans or FanDuel or DraftKings advertisements on the side of these school buses. However, you could use that money to pay for charter school transportation or any IPS. I don't know. Pick your poison. I mean, Marion County's full of degenerates. I'm sure they'll have some like CBD advertising or GameStop advertising. Who could say? Then Fede Cadora wants to raise local income tax. He has a bill, this massive tax bill, and at the end of it, it says the lit rate increase. We're going to raise your local income tax to 2.9% to 3.75%. Wonderful. Democrats always wanting to raise taxes, and don't forget, Fede Cadora is the reason why cigarettes are more expensive. He's the one who pushed really hard when we were talking about the budget this last session, and he said, you know what? If we raise up the price of cigarettes, we can make an extra X amount of money. So Republicans throwing their hands in the air and say, why not? All right, you got it. And Fede is just on this whole patting himself on the back and saying, thank God we can actually make people healthy, maybe, and we can make money off of it. We'll see. Now, this one was interesting, too. The retention of an IURC commissioner. Now, what happens normally is what we are seeing right now. Governor will appoint an IURC commissioner, which is an Indiana Utility Regulatory Commissioner. They're basically like a court for utilities. It's actually very fascinating and very boring to watch. I'm still trying to get through like this 6-hour video right now. It's struggling. Yes, Holy. Well, it passed through committee. Holy Toast. It went 6-3. Yep. Show is going good, Polly, so far. So what is fascinating about this is usually if an IURC commissioner wants to be retained, the governor will say, all right, you can be retained. This bill from Democrat Chuck Mosley, he says, actually, it has to be done by a vote. Okay, so for example, there are supposed to be a couple of new IURC commissioners coming up with the governor, 3 of them. Say that all 3 of them get done and say, hey, I want to be retained. Instead of the governor saying, all right, I will retain you. Now it has to go to a vote. Now, this could go either way. I look at Marion County. We just had a vote last year where we had all these judges can have retention. And guess what happened? They were all retained. No matter how terrible they were, Jennifer Prince Harrison, the same thing could probably happen with the IURC. Or it could work the other way around. Either way, the government would have to appoint another IURC commissioner. It's not like you're voting for an IURC commissioner. You're just voting on the retention. Will this be heard? Probably not. But still though, very interesting. All right, so where do we go from here? Don't worry, on Wednesday, I'm going to talk more about this stuff too. There's a lot of bills. Friday is the deadline for all the bills to be in from the House and the Senate. And I expect there to be a lot of them. However, this is a short session, no fiscal. So whatever they do, it's going to be cleanup or it's going to be something that doesn't cost any money. Now, what happens tomorrow? Well, we have some bills that are going through. We have Homeland Security and Transportation, Education and Career Development. This one I will be keeping an eye on. This one, wireless communication device policy. I talked about this last week, where they are trying to eliminate cell phones from the school. Right now, it's more up to the school. Now it's going to be a complete ban. And I cannot wait to see what happens with this one. Also, we have a watered-down immigration bill from Liz Brown. I will have to watch that one. It'll probably be later. Unfortunately, they don't have the times of what time they are. Oh, it's going to be adjournment of session. So we're going to have session at like, I don't know, what time is session tomorrow? 1:30. And then after that, that's when they will go to their respective committee meetings, which will be, who knows? It could go late into the night. Who knows? Probably not. It's probably only a couple hours. And then we have pension matters, 13 check on healthcare debt and cost. Don't really care about that one. That one will be interesting. I don't know how far that will go because I got a feeling there's going to be a fiscal on it. But since Kadora and Charbonneau are authors, should be fascinating. So what's happening tomorrow? We got Homeland Security and Transportation at 10 a.m. Then we have the Senate happening at 1:30. And then the 3 committee meetings, which I've already talked about, that will be happening. And then Wednesday, when I come back at 8 o'clock p.m. on the 20-minute rundown, that day we'll be talking about pension matters, 13 check. Oh, wait a minute. Is that Wednesday? Yeah, it's Wednesday. Hold on. This is 2. Immigration matters. There we go. Then various probate matters for tomorrow code publication. This one will pass. It's a lot of cleanup. Then riverboat relocation, because we're always talking about casino stuff right now. So really the 2 ones that I'll be focusing on are the wireless communication and the immigration matters. I'm sure I will have to go back and watch it as usual. And then Wednesday, a bunch of boring stuff. But Wednesday, we will most likely be hearing we will have second reading on HB 1032. A lot of fascinating things that are happening. Obviously, keep an eye on what is happening with St. Joseph County because they got some crazy stuff going on with rezoning for data centers. Casey Hendrickson was talking to Amy Drake from the St. Joseph GOP because the GOP over there said, hey, actually, we are for data centers now. Wonderful, right? So, yeah, a lot of crazy stuff going on. But that's the 20-minute rundown with yours truly, Steve Whitmer from Indy Reporter. I will see you on Wednesday night.